It's 2 o'clock in the morning. The house is completely silent. And then you hear it, a cry from your child's room that jolts you out of a deep sleep. You walk in to find them curled up in a ball, clutching their stomach. Their face is just streaked with tears. And in that moment, every single parent is hit with the exact same terrifying question. Is this just a simple tummy ache that's going to get better with a hug and a sip of water? Or is this the one time it's something truly serious? That moment, right there, that paralyzing uncertainty, is exactly what we are going to break down and replace with confidence today.
So, here's our game plan. We're going to start by looking at why this is such a common and valid fear for parents. Then we're going to do a deep dive into what's actually happening inside the body that causes this pain. From there, we'll build a solid framework so you can tell the difference between common culprits and real emergencies. After that, we'll walk through a clear step-by-step protocol for what to do at home. We'll tackle some common questions I hear all the time, and finally, we'll wrap it all up into an action plan that will empower you.
Look, my single most important goal for you today is to give you the mental models, the tools, to turn that 2 a.m. fear into clinical confidence. By the time we're done here, you're not going to be guessing anymore. You'll have a systematic way to look at the situation, know what to do, and know exactly when it's time to seek immediate medical care. We're going to replace that uncertainty with competence.
And let me be perfectly clear. That concern you feel is 100% valid. The data doesn't lie. Abdominal pain is consistently one of the top reasons kids end up in the emergency department. It's a tough diagnosis, even for experienced doctors, because kids, especially the little ones, just don't show the same clear signs that adults do. The list of possible causes is huge. It ranges from something as simple as constipation all the way to a life-threatening surgical emergency. So here's the bottom line. Learning how to read these signals is one of the most valuable, high-yield skills you can possibly develop as a parent.
Now, to really get a handle on this, we can't just memorize a list of symptoms. We've got to pop the hood and understand the mechanics of what's actually going on inside. Understanding the why behind the pain is the key that shifts you from just reacting to fear to proactively interpreting the signs. So let's start with one of the most fascinating systems in the entire body, the gut-brain axis.
So what is this gut-brain axis? You can think of it as a super fast two-way information highway. It's a constant data link between your main brain and what we often call the second brain, this incredibly complex web of nerves lining your gut called the enteric nervous system. So when a child is feeling stressed out, maybe it's a big test at school or a problem with friends, the brain sends out chemical signals, neurotransmitters and hormones that travel right down this highway to the gut. And those signals have a direct physical effect. They can make the gut more sensitive, change how it moves, and produce very real, very physical pain. This isn't imagination. This is the actual mechanism behind things like functional abdominal pain and IBS. So please, when your child says their stomach hurts before school, understand that it is not all in their head. It is a real, measurable, physiological event happening in their body.
Okay, this next concept is absolutely crucial. The body has two different types of alarm systems for abdominal pain, visceral and somatic. Think of visceral pain like a general smoke detector in a big building. In the early stages of something like appendicitis, the inflammation is just on the appendix itself. The nerves in our organs, the visceral nerves, aren't very specific. They send a fuzzy, vague signal to the brain that basically says, hey, something's wrong somewhere in the middle here. That's why early appendicitis pain is that dull, hard-to-pinpoint ache right around the belly button. But as that inflammation gets worse, it starts to touch the lining of the abdominal wall, which is called the peritoneum. Now, the peritoneum has a totally different set of nerves, somatic nerves. Think of these like a modern fire alarm system that tells you the exact room number. They are incredibly precise. They send a sharp, clear signal to the brain saying, the problem is right here. This switch from that vague visceral pain to the sharp, localized somatic pain is what causes that classic sign of appendicitis where the pain literally moves to the lower right part of the belly. Understanding this progression is a cornerstone of diagnosis.
All right, so now that we get the mechanics, let's start building our actual diagnostic framework. How do we figure out what's going on? The single most important piece of information you have, the number one variable that changes everything, is your child's age. The likely causes, both the harmless ones and the dangerous ones, change dramatically as a child grows.
Let's use this table as our roadmap. For infants, our littlest patients from 0 to 2, most of the time you're dealing with harmless stuff like gas or constipation. But you have to keep one very serious condition on your radar, intussusception. That's where one part of the intestine literally telescopes into another, and it's a true surgical emergency.
For toddlers, age 2 to 5, constipation is still a big one, as is the common stomach bug gastroenteritis. But appendicitis can start to show up in this age group, and it often looks weird, not like the classic textbook case. Then, as we get to school-age kids, you see a lot more of that stress-related functional pain we talked about. But this is also the prime time for classic appendicitis. And for boys in this group, we have to consider testicular torsion, a twisting of the spermatic cord that cuts off blood flow. This is another one of those time-is-critical emergencies that can actually show up as lower abdominal pain.
Let's really zero in on appendicitis for a minute, because it's the classic emergency everyone worries about. The most important clue isn't how bad the pain is at the very beginning, it's the story the pain tells over time. The pain from a stomach virus often comes in waves. It's intense and crampy, but then it lets up. Appendicitis is different. It has a narrative. It starts as that dull, vague pain in the middle, and then over several hours it moves, it settles in one spot, and it becomes constant and sharp. And here's a powerful test you can do at home. See if movement makes it worse. Pain that gets sharper when they jump up and down, or even just from the bumps of a car ride, is a huge sign of that peritoneal irritation we talked about, and it means you need to get them checked out right away.
Okay, everyone, listen closely. This slide is non-negotiable. If you see any of these signs, you do not wait, you do not call your neighbor, you go straight to the emergency room. Let's quickly talk about why. A rigid, hard belly suggests peritonitis, meaning widespread inflammation, maybe from a rupture. Vomiting green or yellow fluid, that's bile, suggests a blockage in the intestine. Stool that looks like currant jelly is the textbook sign for intussusception. And any sudden severe pain in the groin or scrotum in a boy has to be treated as testicular torsion until a doctor proves it's not. That is a time-sensitive emergency where every minute counts to save the testicle.
All right, so you've gone through your mental checklist. You've assessed the situation, and none of those big red flags are there. It's looking much more like a common stomach bug or constipation. Now the goal shifts. We're no longer in emergency diagnosis mode. We're in supportive care mode. So let's lay out the evidence-based game plan for managing this at home.
Your number one job, above all else, is hydration. Dehydration is the real enemy here. It's what makes a simple illness become dangerous. And the absolute gold standard for rehydrating is something called an oral rehydration solution, or ORS. Now, why is this so much better than a sports drink or juice? Well, it all comes down to cell biology. The cells in our gut have these special doorways that pull in water, but they only work with a key. That key is a very specific ratio of sodium and glucose. And ORS is scientifically engineered to be the perfect key. It unlocks the door and allows water to be absorbed efficiently. Sugary drinks, on the other hand, have way too much sugar. They're like the wrong key. They can actually make diarrhea worse by pulling water out of the body and back into the gut.
So you've got the right fluid, the ORS, but how you give it is just as important. You cannot let a vomiting child chug it, no matter how thirsty they seem. Their stomach is irritated and inflamed. If you dump a bunch of fluid in there, it's just going to stretch the stomach and trigger more vomiting. So the mantra is low and slow. We're talking 1 teaspoon, or about 5 milliliters in a medicine syringe, every 2 or 3 minutes. I know it's tedious, but it's the only way to sneak that hydration in without upsetting the stomach. And if they do vomit, don't panic. It happens. Just give their stomach a 10-minute timeout to rest, and then start the process right back at the beginning. Patience is everything here.
Now let's talk about medications for pain and fever. Our two main players here are paracetamol, which you probably know as acetaminophen, and ibuprofen. Rule number 1, and please burn this into your memory. Pediatric dosing is always based on weight in kilograms, not on age. For acetaminophen, the dose is 10 to 15 milligrams per kilogram every 4 to 6 hours. It works great, but too much can cause serious liver damage, so you have to be precise. For ibuprofen, it's 10 milligrams per kilogram every 6 to 8 hours. But ibuprofen has 2 critical warnings. Do not use it in infants under 6 months old, and avoid it if you even suspect the child is dehydrated because it can be hard on their kidneys.
This next point is a huge one. Let's talk about what not to give. It is so tempting to reach for an anti-diarrheal medicine to just make the symptoms stop. You have to resist that urge. You have to remember that in an infection, diarrhea is not the enemy. It's actually a defense mechanism. It's the body's way of physically flushing out the bad bacteria or virus. If you use a medication to stop that process, you're essentially trapping the bad guys inside. This can actually make the illness last longer, and in some cases can lead to more serious problems. So unless a doctor specifically tells you to, stay away from them.
Okay, in this next part, let's clear up some common points of confusion. I want to tackle a few of the questions and myths I hear all the time about kids' gut health. Getting these right is key.
A big one I see all the time is the confusion between probiotics and digestive enzymes. People often use these terms like they're the same thing, but they are completely different. They do different jobs, and it's critical to know which is which so you can use them correctly.
Let's break this down with an analogy. Think of your gut's microbiome as a garden. Probiotics are like adding new healthy seeds or plants to that garden. They are live, beneficial bacteria that help restore balance, especially after a stomach bug or a round of antibiotics has wiped things out. There's good data they can even shorten how long diarrhea lasts. Now, digestive enzymes are totally different. They're not living things. They are tools. Think of them like hiring a temporary crew of gardeners to help break down a big pile of leaves. They are proteins that help your body break down food. You use them for a short time when your system is struggling. But here's the warning. You don't want to use them for more than a couple of weeks, because your body can get lazy and stop making its own, leading to a dependency.
All right, next question. Should I be deworming my child on a regular schedule just in case? This is a great question, and the answer is, it almost entirely depends on where in the world you live. The recommendations from the World Health Organization give us a really clear way to think about this.
So here's the deal. The WHO recommends routine deworming for kids in parts of the world where these worm infections are extremely common, more than 20% of the population. This is a smart public health strategy in those areas. However, in the United States, that is not a routine recommendation. We don't just treat everyone preventatively. Instead, our approach is to test and treat. So if there's a reason to suspect an infection, maybe specific symptoms or recent travel, you talk to your pediatrician. They can order a simple stool test, and if it comes back positive, then you treat. So it's not a just-in-case thing here.
Okay, we have covered a massive amount of ground today. So let's boil it all down to the most critical, must-remember principles. This is your action plan. This is what I want you to have in your head the next time you're faced with that sick child at 2 a.m.
Here are the 3 pillars I want you to walk away with. Number 1, trust the pattern, not just the pain. Remember, the pain of a simple stomach bug is often chaotic. The pain of a surgical emergency tells a story. It moves, it gets steadily worse, and it hates movement. Number 2, hydration is your first and best medicine. Before you even think about reaching for medication, your top priority is preventing dehydration with the correct ORS solution, given low and slow. And number 3, and this might be the most important of all, trust your gut. You are the world's leading expert on your child. You have more data on them than any doctor ever will. These frameworks are tools to help you, not to replace your own parental intuition. If you feel deep down that something is seriously wrong, you need to act on that feeling. And I want to leave you with this one final thought. Please internalize this. A trip to the emergency room that ends with the doctor telling you it's just gas is not a failure. It is not an overreaction. It is a success. It's a success of your vigilance. It means you took the situation seriously, used the healthcare system exactly as it was designed, and you ensured your child was safe. The goal of all this information isn't to keep you away from the doctor. It's to give you the clarity and the confidence to know when you absolutely need to go. You now have the framework. You have the knowledge. You are empowered to make that decision.